Trick or treat, the 5-2 Indianapolis Colts entering the gauntlet. You got to love it. 41-21 winners on Sunday in Motown in front of 500 fans. Boy, game-changing plays defensively. Yeah, Chris, it's not very often you get a punt blocked against you and you win a game by 20 in the NFL. So things changed in a hurry there on the Darius Leonard strip sack. We'll obviously hit on that today. And I'm giddy, man. I'm giddy. You know, we obviously got Saturday night is Saturday night. My Irish taking on the Clemson Tigers. So I am extra excited on this Monday morning. And you know what? I honestly feel like Colts fans are maybe in a similar boat to like how Notre Dame fans feel in a way of like, we've kind of been waiting for this. We've been talking about it so much. Get to this point. Can you get to 5-2 after 7 games? That was kind of my big thing all first 2 months of the year. And now you're going to get the ultimate test coming up here. And really, it's going to be a long test. I mean, it's not going to be Baltimore and then it stops. It's going to be really all through the month of January or however long you play. And obviously for Notre Dame, it's the same way where you've faced a bunch of mediocre football teams, and now you're going to face, as Brian Kelly accurately said, the gold standard of college football. So, yeah, I'm pumped, man.
I think we all are. You look at what that over/under was, 49. Colts almost got that by themselves.
That's a good point.
I mean, you and I both predicted somewhere in the mid to low 20s for this game. You watch it and you're like, oh my God, this is and I don't want the overreactions, but this is like a Luck Manning type score that you would see.
You know, you score 0 in the first and third quarters, but yet you put up 20 in the second and then obviously 21 in the fourth quarter there to put that game away, and just another fourth quarter with not a lot of pressure on it. So that'll be another fun kind of aspect to these next 2 months of the season, just to see where the Colts are at against the January competition. Let's briefly just kind of overall thoughts before we get into things I like, things I didn't like. You know, what I am starting to see is more and more signs from this defense. You know, the offense is such a head-scratcher for me right now. Some really great moments and just some awful moments yesterday, but the playmaking and the run defense just outstanding, and you just put yourself in a position to, when you totally eliminate one aspect of an opposing team and then you're able to create the pressure like you did, you start to show up. So I would say that's the thing of, and we'll get into this a little bit more on Wednesday's podcast, but what is different from 5-2 last year to 5-2 this year, how that defense is playing, Chris, that's easily the biggest one for me.
Absolutely. And after the game in the press conference, that's what Phillip alluded to. He said, anytime, we take care of the football and our defense can score like that, we're going to be in every ball game.
Right. And Phillip taking care of it, did a great job of that and really efficient. We'll get into that. Sure. Certainly you saw reasons why the Lions have now lost 7 straight at home, which is just a wild number.
Yeah.
That's a really high number. But again, 5-2 plus 62 in the point differential right now. That is 5th in the NFL. Now, you look at all the NFC West teams, and they all just kind of beat each other up, so they aren't even that high, but still, that really stands out to me. And I find myself, because I love college sports so much, I tend to make references to it a lot. But in a way, I look at these first 7 games and I'm like, this is your non-conference basketball schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've gotten through these, and it's unfair to call 7 games in the NFL like equivalent to playing, McNeese State and, Loyola Chicago for, 15 games in November and December. But it's kind of like that. Like, yeah, maybe you call Chicago like your ACC Big Ten Challenge game, or, Cleveland maybe was that one game you play on a neutral floor that's kind of semi-tough. But now you're going into the Big Ten. You're going into the ACC, and I love it. I think fans should absolutely be very excited right now because there are positive signs that's different than last 5-2, but at the same time, you're going to get great competition now for really the large part of the next nine games you have. So I can't wait, man.
And luckily for the Colts, one of those non-conference games, like you mentioned, if you want to use the basketball summary still, tripped up the Tennessee Titans,
Right.
The Bengals take down Tennessee, and that makes you feel even better today on this Monday.
Yeah.
You get a big win, and now you're tied with Tennessee in the division.
All of those teams you're about to play lost yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, Tennessee, and Green Bay. And then look at what happened on the bye week all the AFC South teams lost. So, yeah, I mean, things are starting to kind of go your way a little bit. And, again, I never felt like this team was ever going to miss the playoffs based on those teams around them. But now it's like, oh, wow, if you can sneak one a week from Thursday in Nashville, now you're playing from the driver's seat the rest of the year in this division. So just really, really exciting times for those that follow and love your Indianapolis Colts.
Well, let's jump into things you like. Obviously, the first thing on your list was the second half defense.
Yeah, and I honestly should even say first half as well, just because what you did with the run game. Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift, 11 carries for 8 yards is laughable. It makes Jonathan Taylor's performance look pretty good, honestly. And this run defense continues to just establish a line of scrimmage, reset it in the backfield oftentimes, and be the best part of this football team through the first 7 games. And then, we've talked about it before, when you do that, then you can have some fun on third down, and the Colts did that. I thought Tyquan Lewis, really good, getting the start for Danico Autry. What I liked about Lewis, Chris, was he gives you 2 sacks, which is great, but one from the interior and one from the edge.
Yep.
It was the spin move from the interior. It was kind of that upper-under move off the edge, and, that's great versatility. It's so needed right now because you always need multiple bodies on the defensive line. Now you feel like, okay, the Colts have 5 guys up front that they really like. Is Kamoko Toure a 6th after, Frank Reich is saying he flashed a little bit at Friday's final practice of the week. If you can build that depth up front, not only is it critical for this season, but certainly one eye, of course, looking ahead to the future for a kid that's on his 3rd year of that rookie deal. So the D-line continues to be really, really good. Kenny Golladay totally shut down. I don't know if he was hurt or if he just said, guys, I'm going to tap out. But 4 targets, no catches. He had the drop early, which was big, but still to eliminate, really one of the better wideouts you're going to face all season long. Great work there by the Colts. So, but when I say second half defense, I really mean that Leonard strip sack.
Mm-hmm.
That was the play of the game to me. The Danny Shelton penalty was just an idiotic play and was really a huge play in the game. But the Leonard strip, that was still an uneasy moment. Don't look at 41-21 and think that's what it was the whole game. I thought the Colts were the definite better team throughout the vast majority of that game. But still, it was 20-14, late third quarter. The Lions are approaching the red zone. They've converted several third downs. Even without Golladay and a run game, Stafford is still making some plays. And then, boom, Leonard comes off the edge, kind of delayed a little bit in almost a stunt action. And his length, that was a big reason why the Colts drafted him where they did. They love the wingspan that he has. And if you watch that replay, I mean, man, he uses every bit of that wingspan to make the strip on Stafford. Justin Houston pounces on it. The offense then goes down the field, and they take advantage. The Doolin pass interference penalty was huge. And then the Kenny Moore pick 6, in my opinion, iced it. So, again, that Leonard play, that's what – and it has been a little bit missing from him this season. When he was healthy for those 3.5 games, no sacks.
Right.
Hadn't had the turnover yet. And you need those splash plays from him. He made a couple plays late in the first half that were big as well, but still nothing like the strip sack. So 5 sacks, another game with an interception. Autry with 2 sacks. Lewis with 2. It was weird. Autry out-snapped Lewis pretty significantly, even though Tyquan started. But, yeah, another really solid defensive performance from the Colts.
Yeah, I almost texted you during that strip sack because, as you mentioned in the last pod, we'd still been waiting on that splash play from Darius Leonard. It was like, okay, he's got his fumble. Let's start going.
It's funny, Chris. I almost feel a little unfair, mentioning that on last week's podcast. You know what, guys? When Leonard's been healthy, we haven't seen the absurd standard that he has set for himself. I mean, it is absurd what he's done in his first 2 NFL seasons from a playmaking standpoint. So we're used to this stuff. We think it's normal for linebackers to do that week in and week out, but that's what Leonard's done. But you just had the feeling, I don't know about you, but I was just like, man, the Lions are due for a turnover. They are due to commit something. And that was Leonard forcing it himself, and the floodgates were open from there. So, yeah, I mean, it's still an uneasy moment. You did not play well in that third quarter. And even late first half, Prater misses the field goal. But the Lions played much better than you through the majority of that third quarter. And the Leonard strip totally changed it.
And then on the other side of the ball, we mentioned at the start of the podcast, Phillip Rivers taking care of the football, completing a pass to 11 different receivers. Just an all-around great game.
Yeah, another really good performance. I tweeted it out at the end of the first half, and I will say it now. It's laughable that people thought he should have been benched for Jacoby Brissett. He's getting no support from his run game. His number one wideout, is now hurt, but continues not to produce, and yet, here you are sitting at 5-2, and really, when you break it down, the Colts have played, 7 games? That's 14 halves of football. I mean, I would make the argument he's played 11 pretty darn good halves of football. Some great, but yes, the second half of Cleveland was awful. And really, Jacksonville, he threw a pick in each of the first couple halves, but still made some great throws in those halves. Like, he's giving you an upgrade. And the situational football yesterday, 7 of 14 on third down, 3 of 3 in the red zone. I mean, that's gold. And continues to give his playmakers some chances. I talked about the Doolin pass interference penalty. I mean, that is a 3rd and 14 that if you are going to complete a pass there for a first down, your chances are, 10%, something not very good. And Rivers like, all right, might as well. Lions have already committed one dumb penalty. Let's see if they can cover this one. Mm-hmm. And just kind of throws it up to Doolin. Lions had great coverage, but too good a coverage. And there's a huge penalty that gives the Colts a 1st and goal right there, and they're able to cash that in. Pascal, the back shoulder of Pascal was beautiful down the sideline. Both the throws to Hines that we'll talk about here in just a second, just beautiful as well. And I guess let me talk about that. The first touchdown to Hines, I believe, was more the catch and run. Rivers lofts that ball, balloon style.
Yeah.
Lofts it up in the air. And, that was by design. And yet that is how just smart and how accurate he is as a thrower of the football. Throwing the football is not all just, are you a gunslinger? Do you have a howitzer of an arm? Can you fit it into these tight, crazy windows outside the numbers? It's about throwing kind of a variety of passes throughout a game. And that ball to Hines, he knew full well, I want to get him running as close to full speed, as close to in stride as possible. And Hines just kind of catches that and doesn't break stride for a second. If you throw that on target behind him at all, no way that play goes for more than 5 yards.
Yeah.
But yet you give 4.340 speed a ball on the highway where you're merging into, just beautiful traffic, and you're great. Everyone else is going 70 miles per hour around you, and you can just slide right in there. And, just really, really good from Rivers. 23 of 33, 262. No one caught the ball more than 3 times. Spread it around. Yep. Yeah, I mean, he's giving you more than you had last season. It's the accuracy, and it's enough big plays. I'm almost nervous that you're putting too much on his plate right now, but he's been able to handle it here in these last couple of games. So you could tell the Colts were running a lot of rub routes early on. They were nervous about Detroit interior-wise, running the football, and then how much man coverage they play. Trying to a lot of crossers, a lot of rub routes to try and get those guys in space. And really, really solid from Rivers. So job well done for QB1.
And sticking with Hines, other than that one drop where, Phillip was a little bit disappointed, you could tell Hines was as he started to run before he caught the ball. He had a great game.
Great game.
And moves. And, acrobatics.
Dude. I mean, Simone Biles was tweeting out after the game.
I know. He tweeted back.
Geez, wow, that's a win. Shout out to Sam Pezic, a great cathedral gymnast. That was also an Olympian. I was thinking of her when Nyheim Hines did his, I believe it was a round off. I think that was the terminology.
Okay.
I'm not up to, par on my gymnastics moves, but my wife said round off into a back twist, I believe is how she would have called that.
Okay.
It looked hard, really hard. I think I would have been fitted for a neck brace as soon as I attempted that. But full pads doing that?
And I love how they said, yeah, he just picked it up. He just, in high school just went and, was with the cheerleaders and just picked it up. Oh, that's cool. You can just pick it up like that.
Right, and I love how Hines says after the game, yeah, I've been planning to do that. I just forget about it when I get in the end zone. What do you mean you forget about that? Like, this is not you forgot to get the bananas at the grocery. Like, you're doing something that can injure you. And hell, the second jump, I'm like, oh my God, did he get hurt there? Like, that was kind of an awkward landing. But in all seriousness, with Hines, and we have been such a big fan of Nyheim Hines and even Jordan Wilkins on this podcast, these are the offensive plays you have been waiting for. We've talked about it before. If you look at Hines' big play numbers offensively, it's been extremely disappointing, his lack of big plays via the run and the pass. But yet on the first touchdown, you bring him in motion. All of a sudden, the Lions linebackers start to kind of shift, thinking, oh boy, this could be a jet sweep. This could be something to where it was coming to the near side of the field, the left side, if you were Rivers. And then boom, he pivots and goes back to where he originally lined up. That gets the defense moving one way. Rivers leads him in stride. And, I mean, the spin move was just incredible inside the 10 there. And then on the second touchdown, you now have him split out wide. It wasn't a linebacker, I don't think, on him. And it's just a double move.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Hines split out to what he was doing, in college when he was a wideout for so much of his time at NC State. Like, it's the different ways he can touch the football and make big plays for you. So important yesterday, and with the Hilton injury that we'll talk about here in a little bit, it's so important moving forward for this football team.
It's like Frank and Hines listened to the podcast because, like you said, they didn't draft him to be a kick and punt returner. They drafted him for what he did yesterday.
No, you do not take a guy like that in round 4 before you took Jordan Wilkins if you think he's just going to be a fourth down specialist. It's a nice bonus. But no, you drafted him because you thought he could impact you offensively in a multitude of ways. And yesterday was the best, and I know it was only 2 plays, and he had the drop like you mentioned, but that was probably and clearly they were trying to get him involved on the trick play where Pascal threw it to him. Like, Hines needs more touches in space. He just has to touch the football more. This offense is in a major need, needs jolts, needs sparks, whatever you want to call it. And Hines gave you that yesterday. So beautiful work from him. Beautiful celebrations as well. Frank Reich loved it after the game. He's like, we want our guys to show some emotion and all of that. And Hines earned it. Just try and stick your landing a little bit better. Don't get hurt.
And the other spark player on offense, a guy who ended up in the top 10 running back-wise when it came to stats yesterday, Jordan Wilkins.
Boy, so needed. Again, Jonathan Taylor just isn't getting it done right now with this rushing offense. And, there's a stubbornness from Frank Reich to stick with the run game, which we can get into. But if you're a Colts fan, you should be thankful that he didn't have a stubbornness in sticking with Jordan Wilkins or Jonathan Taylor yesterday. That would have been stubborn. It was not getting done. 11 for 22 for Jonathan Taylor. Hell, I mean, Hines was 5 for 8 running the football. I mean, neither of them were good at all. And again, it's not all on them, but you had to do something different with that rushing attack. And Jordan Wilkins is the ultimate insurance policy. Played, 6 offensive snaps the previous 2 weeks. Had 2 carries. This was not Jordan Wilkins is in our game plan. No.
Right.
He was not scheduled to have a dozen carries. And yet, he shows up, 20 carries a career high, 89 yards a career high. Frank Reich talked about it after the game. He just runs with a great balance. He runs with patience. I posted a story on him late last night. And then there's a Quentin Nelson quote where Nelson talks about his patience and his ability to read blocks. And I don't think I'm reading too much into it, but I think the Colts offensive line likes the running style of Jordan Wilkins more than they like the running style of Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And And I don't know if, like, you're blocking better, there's a confidence level, but I do think there is something to where, and we had Jeff Saturday on the morning show earlier today, and he said, like, pretty much the Colts run game was getting whatever has been blocked, good or bad. And I just feel like Wilkins he has some patience, but yet when he knows that's the move he's going to make, that's the cut he's going to have, he's very decisive with that.
Yes. And
gets upfield. He's a much better north-south runner. And clearly the Colts did a lot of perimeter runs with Taylor early on that just weren't working. So great work by Jordan Wilkins to deliver, to step up. Yeah, I mean, if I'm giving a starting running back on Sunday, I'm going to have Jordan Wilkins as a starter. I think Jonathan Taylor should be heavily involved and still involved a lot. I like Jonathan Taylor personally as a little bit of a change of pace guy because he has that 4.3 speed. You know, Wilkins is more the methodical kind of runner. Wilkins has the power and the speed, but I don't know. Or Taylor has the power and the speed. But if you put Taylor on the bench, you know, maybe it helps him see a series to start off. And okay, here's what the iPad's looking like, or, you know, okay, this and that. But Wilkins just deserves more of a first quarter opportunity for me. It might not go great, but I think he deserved that from what he showed you on Sunday. So, yeah, the run game had to get something going, some support. You know, it wasn't all great for Wilkins. He had that struggle in the third quarter there, and I think he entered the fourth quarter, you know, under 4 yards per carry, but then ran it really well in the 4-minute offense. So I have a feeling we'll have a few more questions on that come Twitter time.
All right, let's jump to things that you did not like. You mentioned the run game in the first half especially, but the early run game for the Colts yesterday.
Yeah, 5 negative runs in the first quarter. That is absolutely pitiful. Again, as I drop my wedding ring, the point of attack runs just, you know, I don't love the run blocking right now. At the same time, I feel like, again, Jonathan Taylor makes some strides. He needs to make some strides as well with his vision, with his decision-making, things like that. And what's really alarming to me, Chris, right now is your O-line has been healthy. You know, for 6 of 7 games, your O-line has been healthy. And you're about to face, you know, Baltimore without Ronnie Stanley and Tennessee without Taylor Lewan. And Green Bay's hurt on their offensive line. I mean, like, the Colts have, again, had really good offensive line health this season, yet you rank dead freaking last in the NFL in yards per carry. It's so alarming that you're now almost halfway through the season, and that's where you're at right now. You know, Frank, with these second and long runs, there's a very fine line between calling plays to not tip your hand tendency-wise and also just trying to win the freaking game. Like, I get it. You want to be unpredictable. But if you're chasing that all offseason long of like, oh boy, we just self-scouted ourselves at the bye week and, you know, we're running it 68% of the time in this situation, or we're throwing it 71%, we got to kind of change that up. Okay, yeah, to a degree, I get it, but that's such a dangerous slope. It's such a slippery slope of like, no, we have to run this because when the other team watches film next week, we need them to see that we ran it in this situation. Or when it is 2nd and 9, we are going to run it 50% of the time. When you're not just getting it done, that's got to go out the window. And you've got to try and call the game to win that game, win that sequence, win that drive, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that is a bit worrisome. And then I'm also just curious how much we're seeing Phillip Rivers check at the line.
Yeah.
You know, how many times is that, oh, that's a light box. We're going to check into, you know, a run play. And then that's just, again, that's your front not winning. I mean, if you got a light box, you should be winning. It shouldn't be these 5 negative runs in one quarter.
Yeah.
Against a run defense that was like 25th or 6th in the NFL. That is that's worrisome for me. You just, yeah. I mean, you can't run the damn ball. Like, cannot run it right now. And again, for this team to win in the month of January, that has to change.
Yeah, they showed a stat at one point, I want to say late in the third quarter, in terms of third down conversions or third down conversions, and also the average distance on those third down, those 6.5 yards. It's a lot of yards to pick up on third down consistently.
No, without a doubt. And we'll talk about this more. I think we had a Twitter question on it. With the Hilton injury and now losing having lost Campbell, and Pittman still trying to kind of find his way as he gets back in the lineup, more pressure is going to build on this rushing offense to produce, not just play keep away against some of these explosive offenses, but to legitimately produce. And the schedule is what the schedule is. You have not played good offenses, and you haven't played that many great run defenses. That's going to start to change. And that's probably my biggest concern as we look ahead to the second half of the season is just, again, how much are you putting on the plate of Phillip Rivers?
Right.
You're starting to put a whole lot. And, I'm facing the same dilemma at home right now. Not enough Halloween candy was taken by the neighbors. I'm like, do I just eat it all really quick so I never have to look at it again? Or do I methodically eat my way through it? I don't know what to do. And right now, the Colts are loading up that plate of Phillip Rivers. And right now, he's eating it. But dangerous game to play.
Yeah. Another thing you didn't like was a unit that up until yesterday had been so solid throughout the season, and that was special teams.
Jeez, man. Almost got our star player hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sanchez getting hurt on the punt block. Good thing Jordan Wilkins corrected himself after that, and even Bobby Okereke made some plays. Those two, maybe a slight overload, but they just got blown up on that punt block. And then Hot Rod's missing 2 extra points. I know the first one wasn't a great snap, but Sanchez got it. Sanchez got it down.
Right.
You got to make that. And you miss 2 extra points indoors. That's not good. And even kick return, they had a little bit of an advantage there as well versus what you've been able to do. So, yeah, by far the worst we've seen from the special teams. Frank Reich was worried about it coming into the game. He thought the Lions special teams unit was pretty good. But these are just kind of the playing with fire stuff of like, okay, you can overcome the Lions. They'll give you some chances. But you do that against better football teams, and you aren't going to win those games.
Right.
So, you give that unit the benefit of the doubt because they've been so good for 6 games to start the year, but again, you're giving an average football team hope, and you can't do that moving forward.
Yeah. All right, those were things you liked, things you didn't like. Shall we jump into Twitter questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, this one comes from Jacob, who is from West Virginia, and he wants to know who would win in a matchup, the 2018 Colts or the 2020 Colts. 2018 had a much better offense, but 2020 has a much better defense.
Country roads, take me home. No one wants to hear me sing. I sing to Rosie, and luckily she smiles occasionally, but my voice is just freaking horrific. Horrific.
That's all right.
I'm one of the worst singers you'll ever find. Jake, appreciate you listening. Boy, that's a good question, man. 2018 versus 2020?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that 2018 run game, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere against this 2020 defense. I mean, how long has it been since we're like, the Colts stopped the run? And that's just like the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally, I asked Jeff Saturday earlier today, I was like, the last time you've seen a Colts defensive front this stout against the run? He's like, literally, playoff run in 2006. Those Colts teams weren't great against the run by any means. So, man, this would be a great game. I'm going to, me, I'm team quarterback. I'd rather have Andrew Luck under center, but he certainly wouldn't have the defense that Phillip Rivers has. So, that 2018 team, Leonard was great. Autry was really good that season. Obviously no Buckner, so that would be an issue. But, Hilton was still really good. Mack was nearly 5 yards per carry. Yeah, I'll say the 2018 team, 24-20. 24-20.
All right. This one's from Craig, who says, another stellar game by Rivers. What's more likely? The first quarter of the season was a mulligan, and now he's starting to gel within the system? Or is this a short-term blip? Also, is it too early to say Hilton is no longer the team's top receiver?
Yeah, Craig, I'll wait on the Hilton one, but let's go with this Rivers. I can't give him a total mulligan. It's just, I get it. Lack of an offseason. It's not like Rivers is going to play that much in the preseason, though. And let's be fair. The Rivers we've seen the last 2 weeks, I'm not expecting that to be the norm either moving forward. But I couldn't believe how much people freaked out about Rivers after that Cleveland game.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa, that is, geez, you sound like my neighbor just throwing a fit when the Reese's were out at the Bowen household. Like, come on, like, just take the Milk Duds and move on. Like, this is life in the NFL to agree, and it's life for Phillip Rivers, a quarterback. He can be really good, and for the most part, he's been that. But you are going to have moments where he is a little bit shaky. I guess a lot shaky. So I think he's a little bit closer to the guy we've seen recently than the one we saw against, Cleveland. But again, first quarter of the season, I mean, I thought against Minnesota and the Jets, he was pretty good in those games. I mean, I don't think he threw a pick. He was highly efficient. So, yeah, people are just people hate Rivers. I mean, again, I know I've said it before. People just don't like Phillip Rivers. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to look at this without those type of glasses on here. I think he's been pretty good for you.
This one's from Big Bama. Says, the Colts seem to be playoff contenders instead of championship contenders due to the inconsistency of playing up and down to their competition. Do you think that's because of the young team that they have or preparation from the coaching staff or both?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's like unquestioned championship talent on this team. I don't think it's that they're young or their coaching staff isn't preparing them that well. I don't think the talent is at the point to where you're in the same breath as, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Kansas City, whoever else you want to throw up there. You got to have some dudes at wideout. And this team just doesn't have dudes at wideout. I still think the edge group could use another, factor in there. So, the jump from playoff contender to championship contender is pretty big. And I just think the inconsistency of playing up and down, that stuff, I just don't think talent-wise across the board they are, whatever, top 5 team, something like that.
Yeah, I feel like the Colts have a lot of good players, but not a lot of great players.
And I would say great players at the truly impactful spots, And wideout and edge rusher are very high and quarterback on that list. And while Rivers has been good, I still don't think he's, winning you multiple games in the month of January away from home good.
Well, let's stick with that impactful position because Steve wants to know, with T.Y. Hilton's injury, do you think the Colts will go after a wide receiver before the deadline?
When we talked last week, Chris, I think this was one of the caveats I threw in there. If you have a significant injury on Sunday, that might alter my thinking of Ira Chris Ballard. And we'll see how much time Hilton's going to miss. Okay, if it's like the Darius Leonard groin from earlier in the year, he's going to be out, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. I don't know. I guess Leonard had the bye, which helped him out a little bit in there as well. So I might just listen or make the calls a little bit more today, but still, I'm just a little hesitant on pushing that button. And I think we have a few more trade questions, so I'll probably wait on that. But as far as Hilton, people will overlook the injury. People will write him off. People will act like this is no big deal. It's a deal. It's a noticeable injury when you take him off the field.
Yeah. Because
you are just putting a lot of pressure on Zach Pascal, Marcus Johnson, Michael Pittman. I mean, that's not your top 3 wideouts. I mean, what? Hilton still draws attention. And now an opposing defense is sitting here saying, wow, they can't run the ball. And the guy that we used to fear isn't even out there. We can, commit resources elsewhere. Let's choke the tight ends. Let's bring a whole lot of pressure at Rivers. Let's even load the box even more to totally eliminate the run game. It's just not something to where, what's his name? Wink, whatever his name is, Baltimore's defensive coordinator on Tuesday night is freaking out as much as you normally would. Hilton still draws a presence from an opposing defense. And now when you say, oh, Marlon Humphrey doesn't need to shadow him, or we're good, that just alleviates a lot of stress, and it puts more pressure on the rest of the offense to perform at that level. I know T.Y. Hilton wasn't getting it done anywhere near the level that we're used to T.Y. Hilton getting it done. But he's still out there. And that is just something to where, boy, Ashton Doolin gets banged up late in the game. And, are Pascal Johnson and Pittman winning against press coverage when your run game isn't showing up? That's where I worry, because when the Rivers signing happened, we talked about it a lot. The 10 guys around Phillip Rivers have got to really help him.
Mm-hmm.
Your wideouts have got to be good. They've got to win consistently. And right now, that would be my worry moving forward of just, okay, when you play better defenses, when you need to score on a more routine basis, do you have enough to get that done? So I think the Hilton injury is more significant than people will. If he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks or whatever, or hell, it's just another lower body injury for a guy that suffered a lot over the last 2 years. This is one that I'm not going to write off. And at the end of the day, Hilton is still what? He's got to be leading the team in receiving yards through the first 7 games. I can't imagine. I don't know. Maybe Hines. Hines might have more catches, but Hilton, I think, has the most yards in the team. Like, he's still doing something for you. So, this is it'll get lost in the shuffle, but I'm definitely watching it.
Matt says, tell me why Wilkins isn't the best running back on the Colts. All he does is get yards. Led the league last year in yards per carry. Probably towards the top this year. He's so reliable.
Well, he's definitely not towards the top this year. But yes, he was leading the league or very close to it in 2018, 2019. Chris, he was entering Sunday. He entered Sunday with 3.2 per carry on the season. So this is not like he's averaging 5.5 a pop when he gets in the game. Why isn't he touching the ball? Like, he wasn't, getting it done either. But, I would say this is what's kind of held Wilkins back. Injuries in training camp have hurt him.
Yeah.
A little ball security issue, which is a big deal for Tom Rathman, the running backs coach. And then you also fight this dilemma, Chris, of like, Marlon Mack gets better as the game goes on. He needs to touch it 15, 18, 22 times, and then you really see the benefit from him. And then you're like, oh, wow, we want to sprinkle in Hines. And it's just kind of, it's a nice problem to have. It's why, the Colts running back group might be the deepest in the NFL, which is awesome and is so needed. You've relied on all 4 of them now at the midway point of the season. So that's just a little bit of awkwardness with Wilkins of just like, yeah, I feel like he's deserved more, but, then are you taking away from Mack and things like that? Again, I think Wilkins should start on Sunday. But my early thought is this. I don't think he needs to be getting 2-1 or 3-1 more carries than Taylor. I'm just selfishly think, okay, let's give him a first quarter look. What does he look like when the opposing defense is fresh?
Mm-hmm.
And you are playing against more of the frontline guys, and he's not spell duty like he usually is. It's a very interesting stat. Wilkins has started 4 games in his career. Again, a lot of that was early. Honestly, he started early in his rookie season because Mack was hurt to start that 2018 season. His yards per carry in those 4 starts, 2.8.
Wow.
His yards per carry when he comes off the bench, like 5.9. Now, 4 starts is not the biggest sample size in the world, but it's a sample size that we have to go off of. I mean, that's huge. That's 3 yards of a difference per carry.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I get why, okay, the first quarter rule maybe hasn't been, yes, he deserves it, without a doubt. Like, okay, I understand that. But you're at this point right now with the run game where something different has to happen. And it might be too much credence to call it whispers, but I just don't feel like this offensive line has loved how Jonathan Taylor's handling their blocking style. And did Wilkins show you something on Sunday to think, okay, let's see this in expanded role? I think he did. So I'm going with Wilkins. I still like Taylor, think that Taylor needs to be used, believe he can still help this football team. But right now, I just think Wilkins deserves the first call. And really, at running back, it's more of a Who comes out of the tunnel? Who starts the first series? Like fantasy football, this is hell. Sorry to fantasy football owners. But, yeah, I think Wilkins deserves it.
And how much goes into, especially with this defensive front coming up, if you're in there on a passing down, being able to pass protect for Rivers?
No, that is a good point. We'll see with the Matthew Judon hitting the official. I assume he'll still play. They got that apology out quick, which was smart. But, yeah, I mean, Baltimore's front. I mean, Calais Campbell and Ngakoue and Brandon Williams. I mean, yeah, it's this is a front, and they're going to be, you would assume, pretty pissed off after that loss.
Tyler would like to know, through 7 games, which of the one-year prove-it-deal players would you re-sign to a multi-league average contract? Rivers, Burton, Johnson, Rhodes, Carey, Day, or Stallworth?
Oh, wow, that's a lot of names on that list. I'd re-sign Rhodes. I mean, you're probably going to have to go a little bit above league average. I'd re-sign Rhodes, probably Burton, if he can stay healthy. Johnson. Yeah, I mean, Stallworth, Carey, Day, probably needs to see a little bit more. Stallworth's had some nice moments. Carey early on in the year as well. Yeah, Rivers, I would think. Yeah. But, yeah, as of now, I think so. But, you guys know where I stand on the future at quarterback. And this will be a big topic we'll cover more at Beers with Bowen a week from Wednesday. Again, that's 8 o'clock on YouTube. We'll be virtual, as always, interactive as well. And so we're going to take a pretty deep dive into the free agent class. That'll be the exact midway point of the season through 8 games.
This one is from Scott, who asks, is the problem with the run game more the O-line or Taylor's lack of vision?
I mean, can I say both?
Yeah.
It's I do think it's a little bit of both. With Taylor, I'm not seeing his physical attributes on display. And I think that's a lack of confidence, a lack of belief, a lack of, this is the cut I need to make, this is the hole. If it's not there, this should be my cutback lane, those things. But I also think there are some plays where all of a sudden it's like Ryan Kelly's turning around and there's a guy in the backfield. I mean, the point of attack, you have not been as stout as you should be. And we will beat this to a dead horse. You have 5 offensive linemen, and 4 of them are top 40 picks.
Yeah.
You expect better. You flat out expect better out of that group. So it is a little bit of both. But right now, if I'm a little bit worried about the O-line and the blocking, and Wilkins is giving you a spark, let's see if the spark can go 2 weeks in a row.
Sticking with the running backs, Cody has a funny one. Did Jonathan Taylor call Reich's mom fat at halftime or something? It was the Hines and Wilkins show all of yesterday.
I don't know, Cody, if you have Jonathan Taylor on your fantasy team, but he deserved the 1 carry he got in the second half. What was it at halftime? First half stats couldn't have been pretty for Jonathan Taylor. 10 carries, 22 yards at half. Jordan Wilkins, 6 carries, 32 yards. So that is a 3.1 yard difference in yards per carry for those two at halftime. That's why Taylor caught it and started in the third quarter. And sorry about your fantasy team, but again, the point I made earlier in the podcast, if you're going to be stubborn with the run game, don't be stubborn with your personnel. Taylor wasn't getting it done. Hines wasn't even getting it done as a runner. Let Jordan Wilkins try and build off the 6 for 32. And he struggled a little bit in the third quarter, but then helped you ice the game away in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. This one's from Jordy, who says, you can nitpick a lot about this game, but let's just ask about the obvious glaring issue, and in all caps, what in the bleep is going on with the run game?
Yeah, a lot of questions like this. It's, again, the biggest disappointment of 2020. You cannot put too much on Phil Rivers' plate, man. You can't. When you were 5-2 last year, a historic start to the season running the football. Historic start. And you were getting it done in the win-loss column. You weren't getting the vertical passing game going enough, but still, you were getting done in that run-loss column, or in the win-loss column. The Lions literally they don't do anything well. Look at their stats. They do nothing well as a football team above average. So, again, you're playing with fire with some of these teams now. It's a little bit of, I kind of sprinkle it a little bit of everywhere. It's some of the stubbornness to run it, but I also think that, like, I trust Phillip Rivers' decision-making, that he feels like they have advantageous number situation when he's checking to run plays. And so that means you're just not getting it done blocking it up. And then also, again, some of the vision. So when you looked at the numbers of the running backs entering yesterday, Hines and Wilkins had struggled as of late, and Taylor was giving you a little bit more in the run game, but still, none of those guys were at a great yards per carry number. So that's why I put more of it onto that offensive line. But with the amount of carries Taylor's gotten this year, he's had 100 carries. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He's also had a chance to kind of prove himself a little bit more or show you the other thing. And I think he showed me too much of the other things, so that's why I'm going with Wilkins.
Bailey wants to start off by saying, hope your family had a great Halloween.
We did. Great weather. Irish played great. I don't know about great, but good enough. Yeah, Rosie was an egg. I was a piece of bacon, and my wife was a toast, jelly toast.
The photo was great. You guys looked awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it was. The egg didn't last very long.
Okay.
She kind of struggled, kind of a gaudy little saucer looking. I thought she was Saturn at one point, but yeah, we had a great time and beautiful weather in the Indy area.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween Saturday night, man. Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get.
Just pray for the college kids.
But goes on to ask, how does T.Y. seem? Is he at all bothered or anything just about how everything is gone? It seems like during the week he's smiling and having fun, but just hope he's in good spirits.
Bailey, I see T.Y. Hilton for 5 minutes every week on a Zoom call. Unfortunately, that's life in 2020. He's still very businesslike in what I see on the practice field. It's not like he's doing anything differently from the routine that I see pre-practice. He's always extremely diligent, and he's practicing a whole lot, which is good for his health. So he says the right things, but, T.Y., I think he's honest. He knows this is the first contract year of his career. How are you not disappointed individually in what is going on? He wants one more contract. He wants the multi-year deal. He wants to stay in Indianapolis. And after 7 weeks with this injury, that's a very up-in-the-air question, and I'm probably in the minority of people that would even give it a thought to bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I would, but I'd at least give it a thought. So, yeah, 5-2 is nice, but still, these guys are individual competitors at the end of the day, and, yeah, it's nice to win, but, T.Y. wants a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, this next one is some props and a compliment coming your way, Kevin, from Crimea Rivers. He is a marathon runner, and he saves the podcast for his long runs. That's when he listens to the pods. So thank you, Crimea Rivers.
Oh, I love it. You imagine running a marathon, man?
No, I can't imagine running to my car.
No, yeah, same. Yeah, I get out of breath trying to sprint up the basement steps.
Yeah. But anyway, he goes on to ask, kind of seems like there aren't many obvious head coaching candidates, but a lot of potential head coaching openings. If Sirianni and Eberflus get a job, do we have internal replacement identified, or do you think it could be an outsider?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you. I would say first name offensively that comes to mind would probably be Mike Groh, the new wideout coach, because he has been an offensive coordinator before in Philly. Again, that's a role that doesn't involve calling plays, so I don't think it's as substantial of a hire. And that role isn't, Sirianni isn't the quarterback's coach either. Sometimes you see that, offensive coordinator is also the QB coach. The Colts have Marcus Brady for that. Boy, defensively, no one stands out. Dave Borgonzi's their linebackers coach. He's kind of been in this scheme before down in Tampa. But no one really obvious at all. I feel like you see so many promotions in the NFL with coordinator positions. So, yeah, no one really stands out to me. I'm not like 100% sold Sirianni and Eberflus would get head coach jobs either. I know they were on the list back in 2018, but yeah.
David asks, we saw Taylor try to replicate what Mac does on Sunday via setting up blocks and lanes with patience, but it seems like it's not his play style to do such a thing, and goes on to say it kind of seemed unnatural. But for Wilkins, it seemed like right up his alley. With that performance, does Wilkins come into conversation for a lead back role, or was this a one-game type of performance for Wilkins? Hopefully not. Thank you for the great podcast.
Thank you, David, for listening. I'm literally thinking about Halloween candy right now.
Hopefully not the Milk Duds.
No, Milk Duds are horrible. Dave, it's a really good point. I don't know, Chris. When Jordan Wilkins runs, I think there's like a fluidity to him. It just looks natural. More north-south. Less choppy, if you will. Yeah. Again, I am not by any means totally writing off Jonathan Taylor. And I very well understand life of a run game in the NFL can really be up and down. And it can be tough sledding for a while. I mean, Jonathan Williams last year, back-to-back 100-yard games, and then he barely touches the football the rest of the season. So I totally understand that. But I just think as you move ahead and you play the week-to-week life in the NFL, I think it would do well, honestly, for Jonathan Taylor as well, to watch the first series of the game from the sidelines. Watch it, soak it in, and then all of a sudden, you go 10 plays in the Ravens, and now they're substituting more at that second unit on the second drive, and now you're hitting them with Taylor, who is 230, who does run 4.3, and you can get him in the open field, and voila.
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably sounds a lot better than it's actually going to turn out, but in my head right now, that's how I would move forward here in week, whatever we're in, week 9, 10, something like that.
Do you recall who was doing color on the broadcast yesterday?
Yeah, James Lofton. And shout out to our guy, Michael Grady.
Oh, yeah. Grady was great.
Stud.
Great to see him continue to excel and elevate his career.
Right. Why we live in Pleasantville.
But he mentioned late in the game, Wilkins made a cut and then split a double team, and he was in awe. He's like, that play should be on their highlight reel at the end of the season. It was like an 11-yard run. Nothing looked flashy, but for the guys that understand the X's and O's of football, that was a great run.
No, that's a great point. And again, that Quentin Nelson quote just kind of stood out to me after the game. And for those that missed it, I guess I'll just kind of pull it up. And you know Quentin Nelson. I mean, if I get the guy to say 5 words, I can sleep well at night.
He's the most straight-faced, stoic interview I think the Colts
I couldn't
have.
believe it. One of the Colts interns like, Quentin Nelson's on the Zoom. I'm like, oh gosh.
It was quick. It was like a 3-minute interview?
It was quick, but I got the quote that I was hoping for. Just more of a description on Wilkins. Because, sometimes you ask these offensive linemen what the running back styles are like, and they're like, well, I don't really watch, I don't watch it from behind the play like you do. I'm just watching it on film. Let's see if I can get this pulled up here. All right, I like Jordan a lot. First of all, he's a great guy. He's very patient as a running back and really tries to read the blocks and hit the hole. He always runs hard, too. Every time Jordan has gotten a shot, he's done, for the most part, a great job. I don't think that's a canned quote from Quentin Nelson. I do think there is a belief in that offensive line room that they appreciate how Jordan Wilkins runs behind them. And look, part of this is just maturation in the NFL. I mean, seriously. This is a guy that, yes, he came from a great college system, and I expected quicker, instant sort of success than you would think, just given the pedigree that he had at Wisconsin and how much he carried the football. But you look at Marlon Mack's rookie season, man. I mean, he's under 4 yards per carry, yet he's this gifted runner that, is well over 4 in his next couple seasons. And, it's like, wait, they're still running Frank Gore out there? Well, Frank Gore has given you a little bit more from a vision standpoint. And I think it did well for Marlon Mack to kind of learn behind those guys. So, I think this is just all kind of part of the maturation.
This one comes from Cameron, who's a big fan from California. The Ravens, Packers, and Titans all have looked very beatable lately. He says, I realize that they're still elite playoff teams, but are you more hopeful for this stretch of games considering how they've looked and played the last 2 weeks? # let Phil cook.
Let him cook. Cameron, shouts to California. Hope all is well with you out there. Boy, don't you love the week-to-week nature in the NFL? So these 4 games, 3 of them are at home. That's a nice advantage you have. 2-2 is what I thought at the start of the year. I had them beating Baltimore and then beating Tennessee, the home game against Tennessee. I still think I would sign up for it. I think fans would sign up for it. Now, splitting Tennessee is the most important part.
Yes.
At least. If you sweep Tennessee, you are in the driver's seat. If you split, you're still behind the 8 ball because you've already lost a divisional game. Tennessee's 2-0 in the AFC South. That's something you got to remember at this point. But, recently you have seen the Ravens, Packers, and Titans lose games. And honestly, what's more important to me is the injury situation. Taylor Lewan, torn ACL. Mm-hmm. Ronnie Stanley, the fractured ankle. Bakhtiari for the Packers, out. Mark Ingram's not going to play, it looks like, against the Colts. I mean, there are other situations that have impact. The Colts seemingly are getting a bit healthier outside of Hilton, and these other teams are kind of going the opposite way health-wise. So that, I think, is what is encouraging. But I also can look at how those teams have played overall this season and realize, oh, yeah, their 5-2 looks different than the Colts 5-2. Mm-hmm. And it's just mainly, unfortunately, from who you've played. And it goes back to the whole non-conference college basketball analogy that I make. You've seen teams that have played nobody in the non-conference and show up in conference play and play great basketball. You've seen teams play nobody in the non-conference, show up in the conference, and get taken to the woodshed. Now, again, there's more parity in the NFL from top to bottom, but still. I think 2-2 is my expectation. Anything less, extreme disappointment. Anything better, I start rethinking what this team can do in January.
Mm-hmm. Mitch wants to know, is Frank too committed to the run?
Yeah, he is. You just can't be stubborn with it. And I get it. If I drop back Rivers 50 times a game, it's not going to end well, and you want to take some support off him, but it's just a little bit too much for me. And it's kind of how you're built, and you kind of play to your team's strengths and this and that. But with the way you're protected now, if you can maintain the quick rhythm, I think you can kind of supplement the quick rhythm passing game to take up for some of your run game. Because when you get these negative runs, man, it's killing you. I mean, what do we say? 5 negative runs in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
3 drives. 25 yards was your longest drive. Punt, block punt, punt. Come out in the third quarter, 3 straight runs, you punt. Now, you come back in that second drive in the third quarter, you had 3 straight passes, and you still punted. So, it's a tad too much for my liking. But this is Frank. He is going to be extremely committed to the run game. You're banged up at wideout, but, can you work some screen game in there? Can you get some crossers for Hines? Mo Alley Cox is a big factor early on yesterday. I'd like to see, again, more of him as well. Just a tad too much for me, Mitch.
Elijah asks, why does Rivers always check to a run play on 2nd and long? All season on 2nd and long hasn't worked, but yet they still keep doing it.
Yeah, and this is obviously the unknown, Elijah. We just don't know how much he's doing it. It appears that he's doing it at times. But I go back to what I said earlier. If you got a light box, why not? So, yeah, it's a bit maddening. It's like 2nd and 9. Here we go again.
Mm-hmm. Couple more here. This one comes from Brian. Where do you think the Colts team would be right now if they didn't sign Rivers and stuck with Brissett?
It's a good one. They definitely would have lost to the Bengals. That might be it. The Colts really haven't played that many crazy pressure-packed fourth quarters. So, yeah, I would say, you maybe lose to the Lions. Rivers was pretty darn good in that second quarter, man.
Yeah.
When that game was still in doubt, Rivers made some big-time plays for you. So, I don't know, probably 4-3, but maybe 3-4. The wild thing, again, is just you've gotten virtually no run game support. None.
Right.
And Brissett got that last season. I thought the Rivers upgrade, just purely quarterback position, was worth 2 wins, at least 2 wins. And I think we've seen that so far. He's worth it, without question, 1 win. And I'd say maybe into that second win. Probably a win and a half better right now.
All right. Arthur asks, Eberflus's defense has been very good. Let's say it continues throughout the season. What are the chances we lose him? Because every week in his interviews, the man sounds more and more like a head coach, and he's already a candidate for some teams a couple years ago, if he's not mistaken.
Yeah, he interviewed with Cleveland a couple years ago. Boy, how much has this tune changed since week 1?
Right.
Chris, are teams hiring defensive coaches?
The way the NFL is now, it's very offensive-centric.
Very. And the worry I would have is if you hire a guy like Eberflus and you all of a sudden have a great offense in a couple of years, your offensive coordinator is going to go move on. Whereas if you hire the offensive-minded head coach, that offense, for the most part, is still going to be intact until you fire him. That's what I like about Frank Reich as a hire. Of like, oh, yeah, that offensive system's going no. Even if you lose Nick Sirianni, you still got the play caller. You still got the offensive mind. Brian Flores, I guess, and that's probably more of a Belichick tree than anything. Vic Fangio, that hire's not looking great by any means. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing a few defensive guys. Certainly, Matt Patricia will be fired after a few more losses. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I can't. I know he interviewed a few years ago, and yeah, there are some standards and the effort that those guys have to play on that side of the ball that you like, but to be frank, there's not a lot of innovation. So if you want innovation, you're going to look elsewhere. I just think owners are obsessed with the offensive minds right now. Zach Taylor's and Cliff Kingsbury, do those guys deserve to be hired? That's just how the game has shifted. It's not a crazy knock on Eberflus by any means. I don't want to sound like that. But I just think that teams are skeptical about hiring defensive minds, let alone one that will admittedly not say that he's the most, crazy, we're going to play 15 different things, 15 different plays at you.
Yeah. This was from Patrick. With it being a buyer's market, do you see the Colts picking up a wide receiver or a future signal caller at the deadline? Rumors have it that OBJ and Dwayne Haskins are available.
Isn't OBJ out for the year?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I got questions about Ryan Kerrigan, Julio Jones. We got a lot of these, Chris. It's the more I think about it, and I stated my stance on the trade deadline last Wednesday. The more I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Ballard was really win now in the offseason. $25 million for Rivers, 13th overall pick to get Buckner. That is super win now.
Yep.
You are in year 3. You are now tied for the division lead. If you make a move in the next 24, 30 hours, to me it will scream more of we got a few more chips in the middle than we have previously. Wideout is the one position. I can't see this young quarterback being traded. That would be much more of a long-term view. But, dude, the trade deadline is such just sucker shopping. It's like, it's so sad how many times I've bought a Reese's at the checkout line at Kroger. Like, it's so sad. But, that's kind of what the trade deadline is. They just sucker you into, oh, you think you're a buyer? Well, I'm a seller. Do you want to do business? And boom, you're reeled in. So that's so anti-Ballard, He's so, literally, if you make a trade, okay, let's say hypothetically, and I know Will Fuller's in the AFC South, so this probably wouldn't happen, but you're hearing his name. The Colts traded a 3rd-round pick for Will Fuller. What? I don't even know if that's good value. 4th-round pick. I have no idea. You're getting Will Fuller, and he's got to be nearing the end of his rookie contract. Mm-hmm. You're getting Will Fuller on a bit of a rental. I don't think he's in a contract year this year, but I think he would be in it next year. Whereas you could turn around and have that 3rd or 4th round pick in April and be getting 4 years of guaranteed value on that player. Not to mention there are questions about Will Fuller's health and just, those sorts of things and whatnot. So that's just the dilemma that you got away with some of these moves. And I know a lot of people have said, well, you're going to get a comp pick back for Jacoby Brissett, so you wait on him. That comp pick's going to be a 6th rounder at best, in my opinion. So, Yeah, Patrick, I'm saying all this I still don't think you make a move. I just don't think it's worth the risk of sending a day 1 or a day 2 draft pick for what is likely a short-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, but man, I'd look at that wideout depth chart right now and I'd say, oh, geez, don't let me answer that phone because I'm a little worried.
2 more. This is from Jason. Is there ever a concern about having your press access limited if you ask tough questions to the coaching staff, management, players, etc.? It seems like the Colts franchise gets off easy with media compared to other markets.
I mean, if you have concern, you shouldn't be in the business. To be honest, Jason, I'd like to think that I probably speak for myself, but I mean, for the most part, my other colleagues as well, I like to think we ask fair questions, but, certainly me talking personally, when I hear journalism 101, to me, that is integrity. And that means if it's going good, you talk about the good. When it's going bad, you talk about the bad. And it's not all great and it's not all bad. And that's why we do the things I like, the things I didn't like. Covering this beat is very wide-ranging. And, again, it's not all perfect and it's not all awful. And we are never like that on this podcast. So, yeah, to me, it's like you aren't doing your job if you're not asking tough questions and then very deserved questions when they're playing great and whatnot. And I love when, and I've certainly had Colts people that have been frustrated with questions I've asked or comments I've made on this podcast or whatnot. I'm like, folks, this is the NFL. the NFL. Mm-hmm. You know how much money the NFL makes?
What?
This is not, I'm not covering Clay Junior High's cross-country match against Carmel Junior High and Creekside. And we're, Gus Jones is trying to finish, in 20 minutes to get a s'more from his mom or whatever. Like, come on. This is... And unfortunately, Zoom kind of sucks. It's like you get 1 to 2 questions, and I'm like, well, I really want to make this question count,
mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of weighing it. You talk to Frank Reich, 3 times a week, not after a game, so it's kind of tough juggling those questions of like, I've got questions in my queue. I'm like, well, I've been meaning to ask Frank for a while now, and now I can finally get it out. So, yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit more critical in other markets, but me speaking personally, my biggest goal, I know I'm not the greatest feature writer by any means. I know I'm not some incredibly entertaining Greg Doyle. My goal is just to be honest. That's what I want from coverage, and that's what we try to give you here on this podcast and on 1075thefan.com.
Well, Kevin, as you have your Notre Dame hat on, this last one's from Mitchell, right down your alley. What Notre Dame current player could you see on the Colts?
Before we get to the question, what year do you think this hat's from?
You had that since you were a kid?
I honestly think Ryan Bowen had it as a child. He's 5.5 years older than me. My 2 favorite pieces of clothing are 2 Ryan Bowen hand-me-downs that literally you will find pictures in Bowen family albums of Ryan wearing these clothes when he was probably 5. This hat being one of them. So at least 1986, 87. And then there's this Notre Dame baseball jersey that I love. It's got some rips in it. I love it. It's my favorite. I'll wear it Saturday night. I can't wait for Saturday night, by the way, in case I haven't mentioned that 7 times in this podcast already. What Notre Dame current player could you see on the Colts? The best Notre Dame football player is a safety named Kyle Hamilton, who is an absolute freak. He is a 6'4", 215-ish pound safety that just moves like he's the best athlete in the football team. I maybe safety's not the biggest need, but that dude is a football player. And he is just a stud. Why Georgia Tech continued to throw at him or run at him was LOL. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker, another guy. They just call him Woo, thankfully. He would be a guy. I love how Kyron Williams runs it, their running back. A fumble on Saturday I didn't love, but yeah, Kyle Hamilton would be atop that list. Michael Mayer, their young tight end, really like as well.
Is that Baby Gronk?
Yeah.
Okay.
87.
Yeah.
True freshman.
Yeah.
That dude's physically. I'm like, you played on Friday nights last year?
Right.
In Kentucky? Oh, my God. Pray for those kids. Yeah. I can't wait for Saturday night. Can't wait for Sunday afternoon. Boy, this is, man. Think about this, Chris, all right? We got Notre Dame Clemson Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
We got Colts Ravens Sunday. We got Beers with Bowen next Wednesday. We got Colts Titans Thursday night. And we've got the frickin' Masters starting a week from Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
folks, they say March, April, the greatest month of the year for Kevin Bowen right now. These next 2 weeks, I cannot wait. We'll be back Wednesday. Chris going to go on a little vacay. Safe travels.
Thank you. Heading out to California this evening.
I love it. We'll still be back. Podcast Wednesday, podcast next Monday as well. Again, Beers with Bowen next Wednesday night, 8 o'clock on YouTube. Giving away prizes, a big gift card to Colts Pro Shop. Check that out on our site, 1075thefan.com. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you Wednesday.